Sometimes you want something really sweet, you want a cake, don't you, or something like that that's going to really satisfy you. And I've come up with this high protein carrot cake. Carrot cake is actually my partner Ken's favourite, and he's not here at the moment, but when he comes back he'll be really pleased that I made it. So what we want to do is we want to make it high protein. So in this recipe we've substituted some of the flour that we would use for protein powder. And what you've got to remember when you use protein powder in baking, it is better to go for plant protein, because plant protein, it helps the cake stay moist, whereas if you use whey protein, it's much drier and it doesn't taste as good. So that's like my recommendation. And I'm just going to be using some really sort of loose measurements. You don't have to be really precise about this. So first of all, I'm going to take these very overripe bananas. It's beneficial if you do use overripe rather than like green or just ripe bananas. These ones are perfect for this because they're black. They've got a bit of black on them. They're not completely bad, and what that means is they're just going to go a bit more mushy. This will make the cake taste much better, really amazing. They're also a bit sweeter, so they do have a higher natural sugar content when they're riper, but perfect for making cakes. So I'm going to just mash those up. So that's it there. I've now mashed up the bananas, and we're going to get the other wet ingredients, which are eggs. We might need to put some extra liquid in this, depending on the consistency. So I'm going to put 3 eggs in there. You could put 2 or 3 eggs in there. I like to kind of have 3, because I've noticed the eggs have got a lot smaller now. So I'm just going to whisk that now so the eggs are incorporated. You could use an electric whisk, but it's so easy to do this by hand. I have a cake mixer and a blender. You could use that, but it's just not that difficult. And then we're going to take like our dry ingredients. So 200 grams of ground oats. Now I've kind of just ground those oats myself, or they call it oatmeal in the USA. And 200 grams is about a cup. It's like a cup and a quarter. As I said, you don't need to be really precise about this. Got that there. Then, of course, we need our protein powder. So we want to have 3 or 4 scoops of protein powder. So it's going to give it that protein kick that we need. It's not going to have a massive amount of protein in each slice. So that's about 4 scoops there. Then we want some baking powder. So I've just got some ordinary baking powder, and I want like a teaspoon or a couple of teaspoons there. The eggs are going to make it rise, but you might want a teaspoon and a half. I'll go for 1 teaspoon or 2 teaspoons. That's going to be about right. And then I've got some spices. You can do this to your taste. I love putting cinnamon in there. So I'm going to put a teaspoon or a heaped teaspoon of cinnamon. And I'm actually going to go for mixed spice as well, because I like to have a bit more, but you don't have to put the mixed spice in. You could put nutmeg in, whatever your taste is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix around the dry ingredients so that they're all blended in before I add the wet ingredients, and there's still some other ingredients to go. So that looks all right there, that's all blended in. So now I'm going to put the wet ingredients into the dry there. I'm just going to pour that in, and I want to get in as much as possible, so I'm going to scrape it because that's like the best bit, all the banana. And when I start mixing this in, I'm going to find out whether it's the right consistency, and if it's a bit too stiff, I would just add some more liquid in there, because it's going to depend on your bananas a little bit. The size of your eggs and your bananas are going to depend on how the consistency comes out, and sometimes it's a bit wetter. That's looking quite dry to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of almond milk, just so that it's a bit wetter. You could add just ordinary milk or any kind of plant milk, like coconut milk's really good as well. Coconut milk's probably the best plant milk, but I didn't have any because it's natural, more natural than the other types. So that's better, that's much wetter now. So I've mixed that up there, and also I did actually forget, but it's quite a good idea not to put any sweetener in until you've kind of tasted it. And I tasted it and it didn't really need much else in terms of sweetener, but you can add this erythritol and that will just make it, if it's not quite so sweet and you want it sweeter, put some of that in. I just added like a tablespoon, but because it's got protein powder in and it's also got the banana, it actually tastes really sweet anyway. So you won't necessarily need that, but it just depends on your taste. And then what I'm gonna add there is walnuts, and that's like 50 grams, which is 1/3 of a cup of walnuts there. That just makes a really nice flavour. And then also, because it is carrot cake after all, carrots, that's 3 carrots grated. And so all we're going to do now is we're going to like just mix that up. Now, I'm going to do something which is optional, and this is why you don't necessarily need to add sugar. And I'm just gonna add like a really small amount of dried fruit. And it's not even gonna be a whole cup, it's just gonna be a teacup size. So this is it, it's just like some dried fruit, and it's probably a couple of tablespoons, that's all it is. And it just gives it the sweetness to it without sort of adding in refined sugar. So again, you really don't need to add much sweetener. I know some people would put honey in this instead, or maybe dates, put dates in, but it's pretty much going to be sweet enough as it is without adding too many other like additional sugars. So now that's ready. You can see that's the consistency. So it's quite sticky, but it's not really runny. That's kind of how you want it. It's how you would have a standard carrot cake. I'm just gonna take some oil just to grease the pan. Just gonna grease it so it doesn't stick too much. You could put some lining in as well if you wanted to, just so that it doesn't stick. So now I'm gonna just scrape this into there. You can see there's quite a lot of mixture there. And then what you want to do is you just want to spread it around. You can spread it around so it's nice and flat. So that's ready to go in the oven at 350 Fahrenheit or 180 centigrade. Now I've got it on a fan oven. So the temperature, if it isn't a fan, you probably need to get it like a little bit higher. And it's going to be for around about 30 minutes. So we come back after 30 minutes and see how it's going. So it's been on for 35 minutes. I'm going to take the carrot cake out of the oven, and you can see there it's getting quite brown around the edges, so we wouldn't want it to stay in any longer. And it is going to kind of, you can see it's sort of cracked on the top, and a skewer should sort of come out clean. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to now let it rest in the tin, because it will carry on sort of cooking for a little bit. It's sort of finished itself off just by doing that. So you don't want to take it out too early. You want it to rest in there for maybe 30 minutes, an hour before you kind of attempt to take it out. This is the finished cake cut into slices. Now, I don't put frosting or icing on my carrot cake. You could use some sort of half-fat cream cheese and add some sort of powdered erythritol if that's what you want to do. But they taste amazing just as they are, to be honest with you. So it really doesn't need icing. And what I'll do is I'll put the nutritional value up here of each slice, so you can see what that is and how much protein it's got in it. But they make a tasty, amazing, healthy and high protein, delicious snack. The next video that you're going to watch is actually going to be all about what I actually eat in an entire day. So watch that one next to get a picture of what you can eat in terms of snacks, but also meals.